They met long ago, a boy in school and his teacher. But close in age, they spent most of their time not learning history, but talking about music and fucking around. Years later, and still not particularly grown up, they're trying to relive those nerd out sessions. Please humor them, or don't.
Hi, I'm Sean.
Hey, I'm Andy, back for another episode of the We're Right Club.
Yeah, first in a while.
First in a while, a little bit of a hiatus, some vacation for me. So this week, top 5 covers, but with some stipulations.
Yeah, they have to be from an official album.
I think it's almost too easy to go into covers if you're talking about live versions, and there's so many covers done for soundtracks and
Extended editions, EPs.
yeah. So the band had to legitimately kind of release it as one of their own. You know, I'm sure that you're like me, we try to avoid the obvious ones, try to go a little off script. Respect by, you know, Aretha Franklin's Respect, originally Otis Redding, All Along the Watchtower, Jimi Hendrix doing Bob Dylan tune, Nothing Compared
and
to You.
Bob Dylan did tons of covers, you know.
Right? Like, yeah, I had a lot of fun with this actually, because I learned that there were quite a few songs that I thought were originally done by the group and they weren't.
Me too. Yeah, I found a few cool things that surprised me.
Then there were a lot, just because I'm a music nerd, that I already knew that some people don't know.
Of course. I mean, that's why we're here.
Right?
To educate.
Exactly. But as usual, I have a huge list that I'll pare down to 5 kind of on the fly here. So it's not like a top ranked, it's just 5.
Yeah, I was surprised actually. I thought, it was going to be really hard, especially with the parameters of having it only be on an official album. For some reason, I didn't think I'd find very many at all. But I quickly remembered quite a few, and then learned about some new ones that I didn't know about. So yeah, I have a pretty long list too, but I guess I chose my top 5 based on, they're not obvious, and I highly recommend people hearing the good covers but also the original bands. Something I kind of want to ask is, like, did you find yourself while you were choosing the songs thinking like, oh, is this cover better than the original?
All the time. Like there were some where I was like, What a Man by En Vogue and Salt and Pepper.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know that was...
I also didn't know that it was a cover.
Right, yeah. And originally done by Linda Lindell, I think. Because I love the En Vogue Salt and Pepper version. Like, sorry, great tune. But then I'm listening to the original, I'm like, is this better than the original? I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah.
And I did that for so many songs when I was like, oh no, the original is better than this cover, even though I love this cover.
Yeah.
I think what you said, like, really, you need to go back and listen to the originals if you don't know them. If you haven't heard them, go back and listen to them. Now, I do have some on my list where I'm like, okay, legit, the cover is way better than the original.
Yeah. I basically have both, where it's like, you should definitely listen to the original band, but these covers, they breathe so much new life into the song, and they make it their own, etc. And then there are some on my top 5 where it's like, the original's definitely better, but the cover's cool and the band that covered it is very cool.
Same. Definitely the same. So
yeah, it was interesting to kind of like, is this better or not? Or why did they even do it?
Right. And there were some where I'm like, how did they even hear this song? Like, how did they even think this is a song we should cover?
The crossover of genres, like this kind of artist covered that.
Yeah.
Interesting. You know,
I will say that what I avoided because I thought it was almost too easy, because it's two genres that cover songs so often that I was like, is it cheating? Because they're just, like, so ska punk, so many covers,
right?
or just straight up punk. I mean, you get groups like Me First and the Gimme Gimmes, where that's their whole thing, is just to
Yeah,
do punk covers.
yeah. And the punk goes pop thing is kind of like it was a fad for a while, right?
Exactly, exactly. But I was like, do I put Come On Eileen by Save Ferris on there? Like, they're on my list, but I'm like, but then there's Real Big Fish doing Take on Me, and
I forgot about those. That's true. Yeah, yeah, I agree. They're kind of like, you know,
like
they're a bit on the nose. Yeah, they're good, but it's on the nose kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And then I have an honorable mention that I'll get to, that I was like, you listen to the cover versus the original. It's like the cover is so true to the original that I was like, do I really include it? Even though I love both bands.
Yeah, I've got a couple of those on my runner-up list. It's like I love the covers, but it's the same. Not the same, but it's basically the same.
It's basically the same.
Yeah.
So do you want to start us off?
Sure. I'll start with the artist is called Leanne La Havas, and she covered Weird Fishes by Radiohead.
Okay.
So Leanne La Havas is a British like neo soul indie alternative singer songwriter.
I've never even heard of her.
I only just came across her when this album, the album that the cover is on, it's self-titled. It came out in, I believe, 2020, and I really liked the album. Yeah, that song came on, and I was like, wait a second, So the original is called Weird Fishes / Arpeggi. Oh, they're both called that. Yeah, cool. I did my homework. Wait, no, sorry. Hers is just called Weird Fishes.
Okay.
And the original is Weird Fishes / Arpeggi. And Radiohead's is from their album called In Rainbows. She just breathes this whole new life into the song. They she gives it like a soulful spin, but there's this, indie kind of indie rock, indie alternative jam that the band does, and she takes the end of the original as well, kind of climaxes, and it's really beautiful and intense. And they take that and just rock out.
Okay.
It's really cool. And this is definitely an example of, is the cover better? I don't know if the cover is better than the original, but
right.
It's just different. It's its own thing. Like, she took, I guess you could say, a deep cut on a really popular band's album that would probably be pretty far down on, a favorite albums list. And she made it brand new,
Right.
She made it her own. So I definitely recommend her. And, especially if you're a Radiohead fan, check out that song because you'll love it, even though the genre, feels a little different.
My first one, we brought up Bob Dylan at the beginning. So
yeah, I'm gonna have to bring him up too.
The original Bob Dylan is with Bette Midler on Buckets of Rain, but the cover is an artist. I don't know much about him. I discovered this version of this song. It's on one of his albums, but a guy named Danny Schmidt. Okay. And Buckets of Rain, it's like it's a sweet love song, right? But Danny Schmidt's version, I think it's that much more touching. Like it's just it's sweet, it's super mellow, but it captures, like, the tone of the song, I think, captures the lyric maybe better than Bob Dylan and Bette Midler did, which might be sacrilegious to say, because, I mean, come on, Bob Dylan and Bette Midler, like, just both phenomenal. Yeah. But Danny Schmidt's version, it's just so sweet. It's one of, I think, for me, one of the most beautiful songs. Like, and he just catches the tone of the lyrics so well that it elevates the song. Is it necessarily, does it bring it into its own genre or anything? I don't know if it does that, but it's just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So, I mean, obviously, everybody, if you haven't listened to Bob Dylan tunes, obviously he's probably one of the best lyricists ever, one of the best songwriters ever. But Danny Schmidt does a heck of a version of that song. So that's my first.
Actually, my second is kind of in the same vein. It's not Bob Dylan, but it's a song called "To Go Home," originally by Daniel Johnston,
Mm,
covered by Im Ward, Im period Ward.
okay.
And so Daniel Johnston is a singer-songwriter, I believe, from Austin, Texas. You know, very lo-fi. He's like actually a suffering artist, literally.
Right.
People who are that are really passionate about music, that find themselves in a lot of, you know, music discussions, you know, they might, it's like, okay, maybe you're not a fan of Elvis Costello, for example, but you've definitely heard people say how, you know, important he is as a songwriter and how amazing he is and whatever. You know, you may be an extremely messed up individual and not like the Beatles, but you've definitely heard people talk about, you know, the amazing artistry and the importance of the songwriting. Brian Wilson, you know, you may not have heard, you know, the weirder, more psychedelic albums by the Beach Boys, but you've probably heard people talk about, you know, how special Brian Wilson is. And I think Daniel Johnston deserves to be in that sort of conversation. You know,
Yes.
you
Yes.
may not like the crudely recorded lo-fi recordings with the air conditioner in the background, and you know, he's not a great singer, you know, but you've definitely heard people talk about how amazing the songs are.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you know how vulnerable they are, and some of the lyrics are really touching. And so the song "To Go Home," the original is really long, and it's, you know, it just kind of repeats. It's kind of like Bob Dylan, just kind of like repeats
Mm.
verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus. You know, it's all on a piano, like a janky sort of keyboard. And Im Ward, like you were saying with the last song, like he takes the key, most touching aspects of the song and kind of makes a version for like the common man in a way. You know, he cleans it up and makes like the normal sounding sort of indie version of it, but it's very grandiose and well kind of orchestrated. And Im Ward has an amazing voice, you know. So yeah, he took this really touching song, and like he didn't, you know, it's one of those things where don't mess with this, like this lo-fi perfect little gem, don't mess with it. But
Right.
he managed to not ruin it for me. Like
Right.
he took all of this potential, I mean, not to sound blasphemous, you know, but he took all of these amazing things and turned it into like a professionally done, just beautiful song.
Like he carried out the vision.
He produced the demo basically.
Yeah.
You know, he took the artist demo and then produced it basically. And yeah, it's beautiful, it's amazing. So I recommend, definitely get into Daniel Johnston. And then Im Ward, the cover song "To Go Home" is on his album called Post War. It's very good.
I don't know M. Ward. Daniel Johnston, of course.
Yeah.
Yes. Seminal songwriter.
Yeah, straight to the feels, Daniel
Yeah.
Johnston.
I'm taking us out of the beautiful song idea. The original, Little Susie's on the Up, is by this kind of cheesy 80s rock band called PhD. You know me and my this is another 80s rock band, but you know, they span into the 90s a little bit. But Tesla did a cover of it that they called just Little Susie. It is just a kick-ass rock and roll kind of party tune, and it's what got me into Tesla, who I think is amazing. And they're lumped into the hair bands of the 80s, but they aren't. They're so much better than that, in my opinion. And but their version of Little Susie's on the Up, Little Susie, it's just a great straightforward rock and roll tune. And this one, I will say, yeah, go listen to the original. Like,
Yeah.
like you could kind of skip the original on this one. Tesla's version is just there's nothing flashy about it. There's nothing that special. It's just a fun, no frills rock and roll tune.
Yeah.
And it's great.
Yeah, it's good. Like, thinking about why bands might cover something, it's kind of like to talk, going into movies for a second. I was
Yeah.
watching, Seth Rogen.
Mm,
He was saying, like, I just make movies that I would want to watch, basically. Let's take this song that we grew up listening to and make it sound like what we do, what we would want to listen to. They do it in their own way, and in this case, maybe better. So
well, that's exactly my feeling. And having been, playing in just cheesy cover bands and stuff like that, like sometimes you just take a tune, you're like, yeah, I like this tune, but let's put our own spin on it,
yeah.
or I don't like the way they did this drum fill, so I'm gonna do it a little differently this time, or whatever it is. So yeah, so that's the Tesla, Little Susie covering PhD. So that's my second one.
So I guess we have to keep mentioning Bob Dylan. This was one, I knew the original song, and I had definitely heard the cover, but I guess I didn't realize that they had the same title, and I also didn't realize that it was a cover.
Right.
And that's because it's unrecognizable. But the original is Highway 61 Revisited by Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
And then it was covered by PJ Harvey on her album called Rid of Me.
Okay.
So I came across it when I was, looking up covers, and I was like, oh, I know PJ Harvey. I'm a fan of PJ Harvey. At first I was like, wait, no, she probably just has a song called that, And then I pressed play and I was like, yeah, that's probably what it is, because this doesn't sound like I don't recognize it. I haven't memorized Bob Dylan's lyrics,
Right.
So I was like, no. And I Googled it and I was like, oh, it is a cover, So she takes Highway 61 Revisited and turns it into a punk song, basically.
Nice.
And it's unrecognizable and it's like brutal and awesome. I've been enjoying listening to that a lot, actually, making this playlist. Bob Dylan was a sacred name in her household.
Oh.
Her parents were big into Bob Dylan and Howlin' Wolf and stuff like that. And so her parents told her to cover that song.
Ah, interesting.
And so she just like punked the fuck out of it, and
as only
it's great.
He does.
Yeah. I mean, she PJ Harvey'd the fuck out of it, basically. Right. And like, it's cool because going back to that, the question of, is this one better? It's like, well, it's completely different. You could almost like both or one of them and not the other,
Right.
It's a completely different genre. It's basically, she really made it her own,
Right.
It's unrecognizable.
I know.
Highway 61 Revisited. You've heard it.
I've heard it because
it's on Rid of Me, PJ Harvey, the Rid of Me album. This is one of those albums and artists in general that I kind of see. She's one of those I call homework bands.
Yeah.
It's homework. Like, you're starting to become a music nerd, and like, you got to do your homework and you got to listen to shit like PJ Harvey or whatever, the list goes on. But it's a homework album. Like, if you haven't heard it, listen to it at least once.
Yes. Yep. No, I'm with you on that. So here's another one. Like you said, like, they're just so completely different because the genre takes them so different. This is one where I think it might be the obvious cover, but Fell in Love with a Boy by Joss Stone, and the original is Fell in Love with a Girl by the White Stripes.
Ah, I never knew that happened.
It was Joss Stone's first hit.
Okay.
And Fell in Love with a Girl was, one of White Stripes' early releases. And the tone of each song, I mean, the White Stripes is early White Stripes, just balls out rock and roll, really quick, The lyrics are kind of screamed, that Jack White thing, but then Joss Stone takes it and totally just slows it down, makes it super bluesy and full of soul. Like, she has a killer band behind her. I think Questlove is playing drums on the track. I like the White Stripes. I love Joss Stone. I think she has one of the most unbelievable voices in soul, R&B. Really like a Dusty Springfield kind of voice. And the tone of the song, it just changes it. Fell in love with a girl, White Stripes, it's just frenetic, really fast paced. And Joss Stone brings it down and almost makes it like sexy, which the White Stripes, you can't use that word with the White Stripes.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
that's funny. Yeah. Let's punch some walls and be sexy.
Right? Like,
yeah,
it just doesn't work. But the Joss Stone version is unbelievable. But they're both great. I think that if people were to listen to them, like, you could like one or the other because they're so vastly different. So that's my third one.
I'll go with Little Honda next, a Beach Boys song that was covered by Yo La Tengo. I'd say the original's definitely better. It's just a cover,
right?
Basically, I mean, it's done. It sounds like Yo La Tengo, sounds very Matador Records, but it's basically just a cover. They just play the song like they would play it with their guitar pedals,
Right.
But it's really good because the Yo La Tengo album is called I Can Hear the Heart Beating as One. I loved that album when I was in high school. I didn't know Little Honda was a cover of the Beach Boys until later. The song fits so well into the rest of the album that you could just never know it was a cover. It really does sound like another Yo La Tengo song. It's dreamy and a bit noisy and distorted, a little poppy. It could easily be a Yo La Tengo song. Before I knew it was a cover, it was just kind of another song on the album. Not really a throwaway song, but it wasn't one of the top tracks or anything. So learning that it was a cover later kind of made me like the song more. So yeah, Little Honda, Beach Boys, covered by Yo La Tengo. Definitely check out Yo La Tengo if you're watching and you don't know who they are. In fact, Matador Records is your new favorite label. You're welcome. Also home to Guided by Voices. Plug. Got to mention Guided by Voices.
I was gonna say, we can't go an episode without getting so.
Yeah, if we're gonna mention Bob Dylan like 5 times, you know what? Screw you. I'm talking about Guided by Voices.
I'll give it to you, man. I'll give it to you. So I'm gonna go off my script a little bit because this is one when I was doing the research for this podcast. The Happy Mondays, Step On. I don't know how, as an American, I got on to the Manchester kick, but I did. I heard it somewhere. But the Happy Mondays are like right in that pocket. And the song Step On is just this fun, great song. It's so of the time. Like, the sound of it is so Manchester. The lyrics aren't, because it's originally done by a guy named John Congos. And the original song was called He's Gonna Step on You Again. And the Happy Mondays retooled it and made it their own. But, the beginning lyric, like, you're twisting my melon, man. You're so twisting my melon. And it's just like this kind of like, it's just Happy Mondays. It's drugs and you see Bez dancing around, like doing nothing. And it's fantastic, but I didn't know it was a cover. Like, I just assumed it sounds so Happy Mondays. When you listen to Happy Mondays doing it, you're like, well, this is obvious because it just fits with the rest of their catalog so seamlessly. But then you listen to the original and you're like, the Happy Mondays aren't actually that far off of the original,
Okay.
which was done like a decade earlier. And it makes the original in some ways kind of visionary for what was going to happen to music in the UK at the time, 10 years later or whatever. But the Happy Mondays version it's just such a great tune. It's like the iconic Happy Mondays tune, other than maybe Kinky Afro. But when I found out it was a guy, I was like, oh, this has to be on my list because this is a Happy Mondays song. This isn't somebody else's song originally. This is the Happy Mondays. So definitely it has to be number 4 on my list, or the 4th one on my list, not number 4, but
Important distinction.
it is.
We're basically just, it's not number 4. We're basically just protecting ourselves from ridicule.
Yes.
It's not because we know so much that it's hard to make a decision. It's because
No.
we don't want you. We just want to shut you up.
Yeah, basically. Basically.
Yeah.
Even though we're right no matter what we say.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're making me want to change my list now based on what you said about that one.
Oh.
A runner-up might become number 5.
Oh.
You were saying it's surprising that it's a cover because it's so them. It's their song, and it, when you think about that group, you think about that sound, and that's their song. We were talking about this earlier, but Salt and Peppa's What a Man. I didn't know it was a cover until I was researching for this episode. Originally by Linda Lindell. It's a soul song, right? It's basically just slower.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, but slower.
Yeah, Salt and Peppa they add their own raps. Lyrically, it's a little different.
Right. Yeah. But when you press play on one and then the other, it's like, oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And you listen to that song. I mean, it's what happened to me. I'm reading that it's a cover, and I'm like, that's their song though.
Right?
What could the original possibly sound like? And it's amazing. They're both good, obviously. The original is great. It's an iconic song, and you wouldn't think that it would be a cover, but it is.
We had the same experience, right?
Yeah.
Like I didn't realize it was a cover. And then Linda Lindell comes up and I'm like, wow, maybe I need to go back and listen to some Linda Lindell.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or just more soul from that period in general.
Yes.
For me, like I don't know enough. I think I was almost disappointed at first, like, oh, it's a cover. And this is one of those examples we were talking about earlier where actually just forgetting about which is better than which. We learned that it's a cover by Linda Lindell, and now we should check out the original artist. We should check out the history, where it came from. That part's exciting to me as well.
Yeah, I like that also. But I will say, you're right. This song, it's so iconically Salt and Peppa. And you get En Vogue in there doing the chorus.
Right.
And it does change the original. I mean, the original is fantastic, and I'm with you. I need to go back and listen to that era of soul, in particular, female soul singers. But I feel like, you throw En Vogue in there, and it kind of elevates the song a little bit because they're vocal powerhouse, underrated.
Yeah, talking about What a Man is definitely more interesting than what I was going to talk about. I'm still going to mention it. It's better to give Salt and Peppa a shout.
I'm torn on my 5th one just because I honestly don't know which one I want to go with. And then, just mention the other and the honorable mentions. For me, this cover, it's not necessary. It's not better than the original, because the original is undeniably amazing, mainly because it's done by Stevie Wonder. And how do you make Stevie Wonder better, right? like to me, that's near impossible. But there's a special place in my heart for the Chili Peppers doing Higher Ground. I was probably early high school, and I didn't know Stevie Wonder. I didn't know he had originally done Higher Ground, but I heard the Chili Peppers do it, and I was like, this is awesome. Flea doing that synth line, the Moog line that Stevie Wonder does in the original, but hearing Flea just bass it out, and it's full on vintage Chili Peppers. Unfortunately, it's on an album that they hate, Mother's Milk.
Ah,
But the Chili Peppers version of Higher Ground, I think, is fantastic. I love it, and it really solidified for me like being a Chili Peppers fan. I mean, I guess they had some minor hits or whatever, but they were really underground until
yeah,
Blood Sugar Sex Magic really blew them up.
yeah,
Right? Mother's
definitely.
Milk is the album before that. Yeah, Higher Ground, Red Hot Chili Peppers, like it's not better than Stevie Wonder's version because it's Stevie.
And we don't want to have to turn off the comments.
Right, yeah, exactly. Like, what are you talking about better
Yeah,
than
yeah. Unsubscribe.
but for me, it's such an iconic cover by a band that blew up and was totally legit in its own right. They're not some underground band doing a cover. They're mega superstars, right?
Yeah,
Doing a mega superstars song.
yeah, in their completely own way. Yeah,
Yes, exactly. Like holding true enough to the original where you're like, okay, yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's a good point.
So those are my 5. Now I've got a ton of honorable mentions, but I'll let you go first.
I just realized that I was already going to be mentioning Guided by Voices anyway, so I didn't need to force it. This is also one that I discovered. I didn't know that anybody had covered Guided by Voices ever. But yeah, there's a song by Guided by Voices called Hold On Hope from their album called Do the Collapse that was covered by Glenn Campbell.
Interesting.
Yeah, right?
Interesting.
I was like, what?
Yeah.
And it's basically just a cover, but it's really nice. It's a good way for me to, introduce Guided by Voices to the parents. The Guided by Voices album, Do the Collapse, it's from the period where they were recording in, a proper studio. So it's one of their more kind of cleaned up albums, I guess you could
produced.
say.
Yeah.
Hold On Hope is a ballad. And yeah, Glenn Campbell does it amazingly well. It just goes to show how amazing Robert Pollard is. And also, all I can say is Robert Pollard didn't use any vocal correction software. I said it. You can totally hear like the processing on Glenn Campbell's voice.
Can you really?
Yeah. Whereas, you can tell that Robert, I mean, I'm sure there's something, but Robert Pollard's voice just sounds very raw, and he's a great singer. The original is definitely better. You should all be fans of Guided by Voices, but the cover's cool. Show your mom. I talked about that as if it was on one of my main choices. Sorry, I'm supposed to go quickly.
You got caught up with the Guided by Voices reference.
Yeah. Killing Me Softly, Roberta Flack, done by the Fugees. So Cat Stevens, now known as Yusuf. The first cut is the deepest.
Yes.
Covered by Sheryl Crow. I love it. It's a guilty pleasure. It's amazing. I love it.
What's amazing about that song though is that it's been like legit covered, top 10 hit covered by Rod Stewart, and it was a hit for Rod Stewart. Sheryl Crow did it, hit for Sheryl Crow.
Yeah.
I thought it was a Rod Stewart song that Sheryl Crow had redone, and then I'm looking, I'm like, oh, it's not even Rod Stewart.
Yeah.
What else you got?
Another one I didn't know about, Black Sabbath's Changes was covered by Charles Bradley, a soul singer.
Okay.
And then I have Hallelujah, Leonard Cohen, Jeff Buckley.
Yeah.
Hurt, 9 Inch Nails, done by Johnny Cash.
Yeah.
Dazed and Confused. I didn't know about that either.
I didn't either. That one
Yeah.
shocked me.
Yeah, it's cool. Originally done by Jake Holmes,
Yeah.
It still feels weird to say that. Covered by Led Zeppelin.
Right. But they did a lot of old blues covers.
Yeah.
You know, Ramble On and yeah.
Right. Yeah, they kind of took from the playbook, right? The songbook.
Yep.
The Beatles, She Said, covered by the Black Keys.
Yes.
Oh, and what was originally going to be my number 5, Getting Better, covered by Gomez, the British band.
All right.
I love that cover. Again, It's like, don't mess with the Beatles, don't mess with the original, but they did an awesome job. They gave it that kind of indie country twang, and they did it. It was good.
Gomez are so underrated.
Yeah,
I don't think most people have even heard of Gomez definitely outside of the UK.
They kept the, just the amazing Goosebumps, poppy chorus.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it is pretty much Gomez, And we were talking about this earlier, but I didn't know that Natalie Imbruglia's big breakout hit "Torn" was originally made by a California band.
I think a California grunge-ish band.
Grunge band. Yeah, called Edna Swap. And that's it. That's all I got.
All right. So here comes my list. The song Hurricane, originally done by a guy named Leon Everett, covered by the Band of Heathens. That was originally going to be one of my 5. I'm a huge Band of Heathens fan, but their version of the song is so much better than the original. It's a song that I've mentioned in another podcast, so I was like, I can't put it again in a top 5. But Angel from Montgomery, the original by John Prine, covered by Bonnie Raitt. Tennessee Whiskey, David Allan Coe is the original, but Chris Stapleton has made it iconic. Love Song, originally by The Cure, covered by 311.
Oh, 311. Okay. I didn't know that.
The reason we were talking about this earlier, maybe before we started recording, but a song that is so close to the original that you're like, is this the original? Like, is this The Cure?
Right. It's just a cover song. Yeah.
But 311 does it really well. I thought of putting Come On Eileen by Save Ferris, originally done by Dexy's Midnight Runners. Kind of as a joke, I put Gin and Juice, originally done by Snoop Dogg, but the Gourds version of it. Oh, dude, you have the Gourds do a bluegrass version of Gin and Juice by Snoop Dogg. It's awesome.
Sweet.
It's awesome. Black Magic Woman, originally by Fleetwood Mac, covered by Santana. Most people think it's a Santana song. I Fought the Law, originally by the Bobby Fuller 4, the iconic version by The Clash. I Love Rock and Roll, originally done by the Arrows, and then made her own by Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. Valerie, which was originally by the Zootons, redone by Amy Winehouse. I had Edna Swap on my list. And then one I just discovered was a cover that I thought the Rolling Stones originally did, Time Is On My Side, because it's such an iconic Rolling Stones song, but it was originally done by an older female soul singer, Irma Thomas. So there are 2 songs, because it is an album, but is it would you consider Nirvana's Incesticide? Is that a legitimate album by Nirvana, or would you consider that like a compilation or like a B-side thing, or like what would you put that as? So I kept because I was like, Turnaround, originally by Devo, and Son of a Gun, originally by the Vaselines, but Nirvana's versions kick so much ass. But
Yeah.
but you listen to Incesticide, and there's Molly's Lips, which is originally a Vaseline song, and like Nirvana were actually voracious cover artists.
Yeah. They had a lot of covers.
Tons of covers, and really, really good covers, but you can't include Unplugged on
Right.
our list by our stipulations, right? And I didn't include Incesticide because I was like,
It's
is that a
borderline,
legit Nirvana album? I mean, it is.
but it's got live sessions on it.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I left them off, but I was like, screw it, I'm going to put them on my honorable mentions.
I actually just thought of one that should have been on my top 5, or it should have been a main mention. J.J. Cale, who Eric Clapton ripped off, by the way. Completely.
I was surprised when you didn't put this on there, because
yeah, call me the breeze, right?
the
song "Call Me the Breeze," right?
No, but I thought you were gonna say Cocaine.
Oh no, I was gonna say J.J. Cale's "Call Me the Breeze."
But then that wasn't done by Clapton, was it? Was that
no, I just wanted to mention Clapton because I hate him. It was Leonard Skinner.
Yeah, Leonard Skinner did "Call Me the Breeze." I know you're a J.J. Cale guy.
Love him.
Well, how can you not? J.J. Cale is awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, that song, I mean, I like both versions. I mean, J.J. Cale, that album's amazing. I think it's from Naturally, the album called Naturally. And I like Leonard Skinner. I mean, early Leonard Skinner,
Yeah, I got no problems with Skinner. I think that wraps it up, but now we've got to decide what the next podcast is going to be. And usually we kind of have this discussion before we start recording. And I was wondering if we break from the top 5 lists for an episode to do a reaction to a Rolling Stone list.
That sounds fun.
Top guitarists, top lead singers, they have tons of lists. 100 best debut albums of all time, the 200 greatest hip hop albums of all time, so 500 greatest songs of all time. They re-released that. That's been done several times. The 100 greatest music videos. 40 greatest one album wonders.
Debut albums.
100 best debut albums of all time.
Yeah, that's cool, because we could definitely react, and then we could definitely add in.
Hey, let's do that.
That's across genres, so we could go crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's do that. Let's do our first reaction to a Rolling Stone list. We'll react to a list. We'll get away from the top 5 for a while. All right, everybody. See you next episode.
Yeah, thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.